Agboato, long life. Um, Ekabo, welcome out of play. Ori Egun, we thank the ancestors for their wisdom. This is the last segment of the series on looking at OrIki Eshu. This one's particularly poignant for me. You'll see in a minute why that's so. But let's start with OrIki Eshu La Roye. That's the Eshu for communicating with Oshun. La Roye is from the allegiance Allah Ro Yeye, meaning light descends on the mothers. I mean, this is a really very clear reference to possession by Oshun. So, Eshu La Roye, Keru Oba, Oni Mimi, Nfimu, Mi Eshu La Roye, divine messenger of the spirit of the river. Find a place for this burden on my soul. I salute the divine messenger of the spirit of the river with all my soul. So water, typically in Ifa liturgical language or symbolism, is a reference to emotion. Being cleaned by water is a reference to cleaning away emotional upset and negativity. It's obviously a foundational part of our initiation process, and it's one of the main tools in our medicine toolkit. So, moving on. Bobo Aramimi Ajire Eshu Mashemi Omo Elomirani Oshe. My whole body is blessed, divine messenger of the spirit of the river. Do not rebuke me. Just as a note for translation, La Roye is light descends on the mothers, not necessarily directly translated into the spirit of the river, but by inference, all female orishas are water orishas. And so this one, in reference to Oshun, is specifically a reference to the water from the river. So it's a synonym rather than a direct translation, if that makes sense. Tori eni eshi ba she ki imo boba fohun tiri sile ahun olohun ni ima wa kiri ashe. So the divine messenger is the one that I salute for this deep wisdom, for his deep wisdom. He has the voice of power. He has the voice that roams the universe. May it be so. So it's really making a reference here to Eshu as both, this particular Eshu is both the messenger to Oshun, but also the Ashe of Eshu as being a universal principle that allows communication between all forms of consciousness in creation, which is a fundamental concept in Ifa paleoscience. Okay, so now we go to Eshu Anunnaki. This is one of the Eshus used for masquerade for the Egungun, or ancestral dancers. Anunnaki is a phonetic reference. It's not spelled the same, but it's phonetically the same as the reference to the mythical progenitors of Calabash, not a Calabash, of Calderash culture, which is my cultural heritage on my father's side. So, Eshu Mashemio, Eshu Mashemio, Eshu Mashemio. That's divine messenger, do not trouble me. Mashemio, yeah, do not trouble me. Do not trouble me. Ini esi anaki baso rire kioro, Eshu Mashemio egungun olomo. So those who trouble the divine messenger of the past will not stand. Divine messenger, do not trouble me. Ancestor masquerader of children. So this is a definite reference to the role of the ancestors to propagate the lineage and pass it on to the next generation. It's interesting that it's speaking of what for me is a common dragon ancestors. When I was initiated, before I was initiated, my grandfather came to me in spirit form and told me I needed to go to Africa to learn more about my own culture, which I thought was a little strange. I actually didn't believe it at first, but I certainly remembered it because it was an extremely powerful experience. I actually saw my grandfather in the mirror, and he spoke and pointed at me. It was kind of classic dragon tradition imagery there. But I didn't really talk about it much to anybody because it just seemed kind of strange. So when I went to Ode Rain was initiated, they did my Ita, which is the divination that explains my destiny. And the first words out of Araba Adesanya Awoyade's mouth when he interpreted the Odu that fell was, "Take an offering to your grandfather and thank him for bringing you here." That was just a profoundly transformative moment for me. It's really simple statement, but it spoke to the depth of the reality of what I was getting myself into for the first time at the time. So the next line, oh, I lost my place here. Okay, Egungun Olomo Eshu Anunnaki Ababy Baba Dun Sin, Egungun Olomo, ancestor masquerader of children, behold the divine messenger of the past, the true spirit reincarnated, ancestor masquerader of children. So this is a reference to the idea that I have also found to be true, that when we connect to our ancestors, that actually that our DNA, in addition to carrying what we could call physical genetic traits of our ancestors, also carries, the DNA itself carries the memory of their life experience. And that truth becomes an essential part of a lot of the secret, sacred technology used in Ifa to pass wisdom from one generation to the next. So the ability to connect with Egun, which is different than Ara Arun. Ara Arun is one ancestor, Egun is all our ancestors. The ability to collect to that gives us the access to what could be a visionary experience of their entire history. I've been blessed to have that experience with my father's ancestors, and it's truly a phenomenal experience, and it's also very informative, and unfortunately and painfully does not necessarily match the academic historical narrative. So until maybe 10 years ago, I've been reluctant to talk about it. Certainly when I started talking about it, I took a lot of heat maybe 20 years ago, but in the last 5-10 years, the resistance to at least considering the fact that those visionary experiences might be objectively truthful is becoming more and more acceptable. And I think more and more acceptable because it becomes increasingly clear that much of what is called academic history is such a distortion of the truth. It's really amazing. In any case, let's move on. Egun le ri un, egungun le re un, Eshu Anunnaki Agbo Baba Duni Sin, spirit reincarnated, medium of the spirit reincarnated. Behold the divine messenger of the past, the true spirit reincarnated. So we have a subtle distinction linguistically of what we're talking about and talking to. Egun, we say Egun le ri un, so that's the ancestral collective spirit reincarnating. But then we're going Egungun le ri un, repeating the phrase with the word Egungun, meaning we're asking for connection with the lineage of ancestral mediums who existed before us. So be clear, Egun is the entire lineage, but Egungun, by invoking the spirit of Egungun, we're invoking the spirit of those selected members of each lineage who function as mediums. Now, in my own Hungarian lineage, they didn't call it Egungun, obviously, but there were ancestral mediums. Believe it or not, this is part of all the difficulty in understanding the past. The word for medium in Hungarian, in actually Calderesh, which the retentions in the Hungarian language, the word for medium is vampire. You know, all the negative associations with that was an effort by the Catholic Church in about 500 years ago to denigrate the esoteric traditions of Eastern Europe. So vampires were depicted as become popularized in movies and Gothic novels, but that's not the truth related to the history of the faith of my ancestors. Vampire in the media is kind of like the notion that Chucky's a voodoo doll. I mean, it's makes an interesting movie, but it's got nothing to do with reality. All right, so last line, Orisha le ring un. So we're also saying that the ancestral mediums carry the link to the forces in nature that they were initiated to. So this is kind of a call for the collective vision of the past as a way of informing us where we've been and how to move forward. You know, there's a common African proverb that says we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. The way we do that is remembering them well, and the way we remember them well is to invoke their memories, and those memories present to us in altered states of consciousness that we call visionary. So this issue kind of addresses that. So, you know, we've far from fully covered the OrIki's for Eshu. You know, that I would say I easily have access to maybe 300 different Eshus. We could spend the next 5 years going over that material. I think I've given people a taste. The important thing to remember is each Orisha has its own Eshu, and each Odu has its own Eshu. So the Odu the Eshu of an Odu is that Odu coupled with the word Eshu placed in front of the name of the diviner. So that gives you access right there to at least 256 Eshus. If you, you know, I misspoke, you get access to more. So if you have 256 verses with the names of diviner, in the diaspora, we have access to at least half a dozen verses for each Odu. So that means a half a dozen names for Eshu. So that's almost three or three or 400 names for Eshu, easily. More than that, 500, over 1,000. Sorry, my math is a little shaky this morning. So we have plenty of resource material for making Eshus. Essentially, Eshus are wash, anoint, invoke, feed, and read. So you wash them with spinach water. You anoint them usually with palm oil. Some exceptions. Oshun's Eshu is honey. You know, for the Orisha Eshus, you anoint them with the same materials you use to anoint the pots for that Orisha. And then the rest of the Odus, as far as I know, would be anointed with Efun, except those Orishas that are born in the right or left leg with Ofun, Otura, Ogbe. I would use Efun in those cases to anoint the Eshus. All right, so let me see, are there any questions? Welcome everybody. Everybody up bright and early here this morning. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to go on it's going to take at least a month to cover the material starting tomorrow. Starting tomorrow, we're going to do OrIki for Elah, praise names for Elah. You know, it's really painful to realize that many Awo in the diaspora do not recognize the role, function, or even the existence of Elah, let alone the requirement of Awos to go into possession with Elah. So if we look at the liturgical language that describes Elah, we have a better understanding of the role and function of Elah. Understand that an OrIki invokes the spirit by describing its essence. That's part of the invocation process. Then there are what's called Opo Asheo, words of power within the OrIki that trigger or spark or ignite the actual state of elevated consciousness. So every OrIki has those two components. It has description of the function of the spirit coupled with trigger words that ignite the altered state of consciousness. So everybody stay safe. Know that you're loved and appreciated. We'll talk again. Odabo.